Hi, welcome to GiveThx. We're so excited to have you with us. My name is Amy and I'm joined by my colleague and our co-founder, Michael Fatur. We're so happy to have you join us to talk about how to integrate gratitude practice in distance learning, understanding that most of you are either in the midst of distance learning or perhaps doing some hybrid version. So we welcome your participation throughout. I want to make sure you know we will be sharing resources after, including a recording of this, as well as decks and our practice guide and all of that. So don't worry, that will all be shared at the end. And I want to make sure that you see the poll we are sharing with you. I want to give you just a couple minutes or maybe 30 seconds to finish filling out the poll. We just want to know who's here with us and you know, your capacity, what you know about GiveThx and how you feel about relationships at your school in the midst of distance learning right now. So I'll go ahead and end that poll. So if you want to fit anything in, just click your last responses in. And it looks like we can share these results with you. It looks like we have some teachers, we have some parents, some other people who've used GiveThx in the past, some that feel the learning is the same, the learning community relationships are the same, some stronger, some weaker. So we've got it sort of all over the board. Thank you so much for sharing with us. We're going to jump right in and talk a little bit about gratitude science. And some of you have used GiveThx and some have not. So we'll talk about, you know, we're all here because we believe in gratitude science and we know that a practice of gratitude is important. So we'll just kind of review that, talk about GiveThx as an app, explore some of the specific practices you can use, and then look for routines in your own work, in your own practice where you can implement. So we know that right now, especially, it's a huge challenge to find the space and time to connect with your students and within your community, teachers to teachers, teachers to families. So I'd love to just have you share in the chat what you miss most about the in-person instruction with regard to connecting with your students. If you could just take a moment to share that. You can share that personally to us in the chat. You can share it publicly in the chat, and you can also share it. We have a Q&A as well. So in the chat right now, if you could share your thoughts and then use the Q&A for questions, that would be fantastic. And again, if you're not comfortable sharing out with everybody, you can just share out with us in particular. It looks like a couple of you have said that you miss just the face-to-face. So the sort of hallway banter, one of you says, and just connecting with students and seeing their facial expressions. Yeah, it looks like one of you says it's hard to just see how someone's doing from just seeing them on Zoom or when they don't share their face on Zoom. I miss seeing all of the students and getting to read their emotions more clearly. I know it can be really hard over Zoom. We can be a little bit stilted there. And Mike, thanks for sharing as well that you'll be answering the questions on the chat. I appreciate that as well. So we'll just do a quick review of gratitude science, sort of assuming all of you are sort of bought into the fact that, you know, we need this practice of gratitude, but just a reminder that gratitude is truly feeling thanks and appreciation. And that can be for things, that can be for events. It can also be for other people, and then they can feel it for us. And we really want kids to be able to identify that gratitude and then be able to practice it. We want to make sure that they learn in making those connections that they can be grateful for others. And then we demonstrate that too by being grateful for them. We know that in the science, in the research, that gratitude truly helps us create a sense of belonging and strengthens relationships. And that's going to be at the key today of what we discuss, because we know that those are key for community. We also know that it helps to boost happiness and self-esteem and reduces stress and anxiety. This is really important for us to keep at the heart of our instruction and knowing, because while this may take a little extra time, a little bit of extra effort, we know that in the end, it's actually more beneficial and makes everything smoother because we're working in a true community. So we have GiveThx to practice this gratitude. It's an actual curriculum and practice. It's a web app to create some equity that you can join in from anywhere. It's not a downloadable app. And we provide you with a free curriculum that you can use. And I just want to stress that for this year, the 2021 school year, GiveThx is completely free in response to COVID. And always our curriculum is free, always and forever. So you guys can use any of these practices we share today with or without our app. And we just want to make sure that you're really aware of that. The other thing that GiveThx does is it provides sort of a school-wide and student-centered approach to really changing behaviors. We focus on the learning of gratitude, that practice, the realization of it, the seeing it, the identifying it, and then the practice of it. And then it allows us to intervene as instructors. And I saw we have a parent joining us, we have some counselors. So it allows us to intervene, monitor, and coach. And I'll kind of walk you through what that looks like in our app. And if any of you at any time want to sign up for a demo or a refresher of the actual app, we will definitely be here for you to do that. We can do that one-on-one or with your faculty. So when you jump into our app, as I said, it gives you the opportunity to sort of monitor what's going on, coach those students, and intervene when necessary. When you're in our app, you can compose a thank you note to anybody in your class. So we can set up classes where students see specific students, or we can open it up to the school. They can see any staff member, and any staff member can see them. We also have a more private approach, a reflective task, where we ask students to reflect on something. That could be on something that happened to them, like this 3 good things, which is super popular to think about. What are we grateful for in the world? But it can also be something you customize for your school or for the situation. It could be COVID specific, for example, or distance learning specific, if you like. When kids send those thanks notes, teachers can see them. And so they can really monitor and see if there's anything inappropriate or anything that they want kids to expand on, to really touch on. Remember, we talked about you can be grateful for a thing or a person, and it usually triggers an emotion. And so we want kids sharing that. We want them to write meaningful notes, not just, hey, thanks. And then you are able to tag those notes to competencies. And these, it's really important to note, are customizable for your school. So there could be certain social emotional competencies that you focus on as a school community that you want your kids to recognize. And so they will see a strengths inventory of how they are being thanked and what they're being recognized for, but they can also see what they're recognizing in other. There's also a giving inventory. And so they can really reflect on, wow, I never knew that I was noticed for being courageous. I never thought of myself as a courageous person, but that looks like what I'm being recognized for, or what's really important to them and what they're recognizing others for. We want to make sure that you're able to identify any students that are being isolated. You can do that through the reflections or their participation and really intervene if there's anything that's concerning to you. You have an actual heat map of students to see if they're being included in the practice, and we have some specific practices to ignite that inclusion. So we'll go over some of those practices as well. So you want to make sure that we do increase their sense of belonging by looking and monitoring and intervening where we can. And then we provide you, and again, this is at the end of the presentation, we'll share this with you, but we have a public practice guide that helps you walk kids through thanks notes and reflections. So we have an entire guide of practices that you can use. Again, all of this is free, and you can use it with or without our app in terms of helping kids to feel included and making those connections. And here's an example of one of those practices. This is called partner gratitude. And this is one where we recognize somebody that we've worked with. So this works well with staff in a staff meeting or reading groups, lab partners, you name it. Wherever you've set them up in distance learning or live, when they've worked with a partner, this really helps them to recognize what that partner did and how can they recognize how that helped them and what they're grateful for, the emotions it triggered. And I point this out because we're going to talk specifically about our practices within distance learning. And I just want you to notice that each of our practices is designed to be very simple and brief and efficient. So it's designed to take about as long as attendance would. So a regular practice, they're about 4 to 10 minutes long, each of them, and they come with their own deck. So before we jump into offering you some specific practices, I just wanted to do that run through of gratitude and why we're here and sort of what we can offer you. Before we jump into some of those specific routines that might be helpful in distance learning, I would love for you to just think about what are some daily, maybe weekly or monthly distance learning routines you've maybe got in place? Maybe you tried in the spring and you're perfecting right now, knowing that it's still the beginning of the year, but where students and staff could actually give and reflect. What are activities that you're doing? And I welcome you to post those either publicly in the chat or to share them with us privately if that would make you feel more comfortable. So it would be great, you know, if you're thinking about maybe, oh, well, when I meet with my students on Mondays, we always have a morning meeting publicly on Zoom, or maybe, you know, when we close up at the end of the day, we meet again live. So what are routines like that? And we would love for you to share some of those. And it looks like one of you says that you do warm-ups in math class, so that's great. Warm-ups is a great time. That's a great routine where we could add in a practice of gratitude, get their minds going. Mike, thanks for joining small group learning. Yep, that's a good one as well. Department meetings and professional learning groups are good ones as well, where we work. That would be a good one for partner work, especially, or group gratitude. If you have others that you want to share in the chat, we welcome some ideas. I find that as we talk about developing community, knowing that you're part of this GiveThx community is a good place for you to share what works, and also some questions that you have or troubles you've run into, so that we can help you to troubleshoot together. And as somebody sharing, morning homeroom every day when you're done activity after morning work, and class meetings every other Friday, PLCs with staff. Thank you. Those are some great routines that you already have in place. So thinking about those routines, we want you, and somebody else says that they are talking about department meetings. Great. So when you're thinking about those routines that you already have in place, I want to make sure that you're thinking about any anchor times and routines as we go through this, right? So those things you've already brought up, or maybe some will trigger for you as we talk about these. We'll start with daily, then we'll go to weekly, and then we'll go to monthly. Now, we know from the research that gratitude about 3 times a week is ideal. So if you could sit down and practice gratitude 3 times a week, we know that's what we're shooting for. But we also know that, especially in distance learning, that can be hard. So we want to break this down into daily, weekly, and monthly, because there may be opportunities where you do it with your students and then with your staff, or maybe with different classes. So if you think about your daily routine, and some of you already mentioned this, but check in, check out, like maybe one of you wrote when you're done with activities in the morning, that may be a good time to reflect and focus. And we have that reflection that we share with you, that 3 good things. What are 3 good things that happened? What led up to those 3 good things? And so really thinking about the gratitude and reflection process with that. So with regard to the actual activity maybe, or something that led up to being there in that moment. And then doing an activity process check. So, you know, recognizing some behaviors that might have been really good toward the community, those pro-social behaviors that helped contribute to the community, as opposed to just being a friend or just helping out, but really thinking about what contributed to the community, because that's what we're focusing on, building community and distance learning, right? So our partner gratitude that I shared, we also have a group gratitude that can be really helpful with the process check. We have a write and shout out gratitude, so where you share it and then maybe you shout it out if you are in a group setting. That can be nice as well. When we think about that weekly routine, those morning meetings one of you mentioned, there could be well-being check-ins, and then the end of the week reflection. I think one of you said on Fridays you have sort of an end of the week. One of you say you have morning advisory sessions. Perfect. That would be a great one. Small group advisor sessions are great. So we have new gratitude. And one thing you may or may not have noticed when we showed you sort of the screenshot of GiveThx is when you thank somebody, you actually can see how many times you've thanked them. So as a teacher, you could assign new gratitude. So find somebody you haven't thanked yet. You can also assign paired gratitude if you want, if you notice that somebody hasn't thanked somebody. You could do that well-being check-in, just kind of, that's a reflection. That one would be like, just let me know something that's going on. Let me know what you think I should know about that's going on with you. And again, that's a personal reflection between teacher and student. And then the end of the week reflection could be, you know, another sort of reflect on a favorite thanks note that you've gotten. So thinking it's another reflection task, but it's like looking at what you've received as a thanks note from somebody else and really reflecting on that and what that meant to you. And then finally, as we think sort of more on a monthly perspective, and as we think, you know, right now we're in October, we're kind of getting into the swing of things. Next month is Thanksgiving, so we really want to try to build up a practice toward that. If we think about that, we can think about what we call the behavior challenge. And the behavior challenge is really thinking about, you know, how do we as a group, so as a class, maybe a subgroup of the class, maybe as a grade, can we write as many thank you notes to build up to? So as a school, can we get to 500 thanks notes? As a class, can we write the most thanks notes? So, you know, you think about the challenge that's going to resonate well in your community, but that's what we're talking about, kind of recognizing these acts of kindness, right? Student-led conferences is a great way to get kids to start thinking this might be a time to check in and really getting them to take ownership over their learning. And this is a great time in distance learning or hybrid learning where we're meeting really face-to-face this way is a nice way to get kind of private with them and sharing their strengths. So looking at that graph we showed you, those strengths inventory, we call it, where they look at what they're being recognized for by social emotional competency and getting them to really reflect on that and think about, why am I being recognized for this? Or does this surprise me? Or does this resonate with who I am as a person? And then family practice, really thinking about how can we include either family or other community outside of the school, because right now we're leaning on that outside community because a lot of us are still either sheltering in place or doing our learning maybe from a community center instead of school. So how do we include our community and family in that? And that we have a practice of gratitude interview that they can do. So as you think about the practices and the routines we talked about, I would love to know, as you're thinking about sort of routines that you've either already shared with us, or maybe this has triggered an idea for a new one, and it's lovely to share as a group. But really, how could you use the gratitude practices, the giving and the reflecting? So sharing thanks notes with other students and staff, either staff to staff or student to staff, right? How can you enhance one of these routines that you already have, maybe introducing a new one? Where do you think this kind of fits in? Which of these kind of resonated with you as an educator, as a parent, to really think about using? And we would love to know where you feel this could kind of fit in with what you're already doing. And it looks like one of you, and again, you can share these privately or you can share these publicly, and we welcome you again to work as a community, the GiveThx community, to share. But it looks like one of you says you could use this in lunch bunch. So I know lunch bunch could be an optional, I don't know if yours is or not, but sometimes that's an optional thing where students can come and kind of gather in a social way. So this could be for those pro-social behaviors. That would be a really nice one to do. And I know some schools even have staff lunch bunch, so that can be really helpful where they can kind of come in and meet together. And I would love to know if there's anything, you know, specific to your community or ideas that have worked really well for you. And it looks like one of you saying in staff breakout rooms when you work together in staff breakout rooms. So that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. We really appreciate it. And it looks like we have a question coming in, and I'm wondering, Mike, if you can either let me know if that's a question we want to address, or if that's something you can address in the Q&A as well. And one of you shares faculty appreciations at the end of your meetings. Yes, that's a wonderful time to kind of bring GiveThx in and do one of these practices. So if you're doing appreciations at the end of the meetings, is it with a colleague where you could do partner gratitude? Is it with a group that you met with? Wonderful, fantastic. And remember, we have multiple practices for you to look through. We've just sort of highlighted a few of them. I want to make sure that you see that we offer you these resources, specifically our distance learning guide, which really breaks down those daily, weekly, and monthly routines with links to the actual practices. So I want to highlight that we have that distance learning guide for you right now as we're all sort of in that kind of learning from each other. And I want to make sure that you're aware we're going to send you a copy of this, and we welcome you to share it out. Again, our app is completely free for the 2021 school year, and all of our practices are always free. So please contact us. I'm just Amy at GiveThx.org, and you can contact us. Go to our website. If you want to do a personal demo and we'll share the actual tool for you, we can start a pilot. If you're currently using GiveThx, which I know some of you are, we're always happy to meet with you or more staff or faculty that need some help learning how to use the tool or talking specifically about the practices at your school. And I also really want to make sure that you're aware. Oh, and thanks, Mike, for sharing the distance learning guide in the chat there as well. And I want to make sure that you're aware we're going to share out a recording of this. So please share it out with others, because we really appreciate kind of spreading the word so that we can open up that GiveThx community to others. Here's a bit.ly for the presentation we've shared with you today. If you have any questions, just info@givethanks.org. And again, I'm Amy at givethanks.org. And we welcome you to share this out. And we welcome you to come back in November, where we're going to talk specifically about how to engage that family and external community with gratitude. And we'll talk specifically with regard to Thanksgiving holiday. It's a great time right now to build up a practice of gratitude as we lead up into that holiday. I want to thank you so much for your time, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And I'll stay on for any specific questions, but I want to be mindful of your time, and I want to wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for joining us.